Good morning, my friends. Bring that up here. Good morning, good morning, good morning to you. It is Thursday morning, Thursday, May 12th, 2022. And it is wonderful to be together with you today. I look forward to these times that we have together. It's a different way to be in ministry together. It is a different way to be together. It's a different way to be a small group and to share life. And that's what we do here at PB Reads the Bible. Well, who's PB? I am Pastor Brian, pastor here at Christ United Methodist Church. Love being here. It's been almost exactly 3 full years, another like 6 weeks. Actually, 4 weeks from now will be 3 years since we moved into Waynesboro, because I think it was the 14th of the month when we moved into the community. And it would have been July 1st when my appointment started here. So wonderful, great. Time shoots by. Of course, that I say that time goes by, but and yet, of course, in some ways, the last 2 years have been so long dealing with the pandemic and all of that, which, of course, some numbers in some places are going up again. So we shall see. We shall see. But that's not what we're here for. We're here to read the Bible together and to learn a little bit more about it. So go ahead and check in. Let me know that you're watching. I keep telling folks, and many of you already know this, you're going to know exactly what I'm going to say. Facebook only gives me a number. YouTube only gives me a number. I like to know who it is that's watching. So so I can keep you in my prayers just in general as we're going through this each day. And also, so please let me know who you are. Let me know you're there, even if you're not watching live. I do go back in and check. I checked about 10 minutes ago and saw that somebody was actually pretty much in the process of watching yesterday's video. So that was cool. That was cool. And I got text that somebody finished up watching yesterday's last night or something like that. So this is all good stuff. No, I'm sorry, they finished watching it this morning. So go ahead and let me know. Check in. Let me know you're there. I see that that's popping up already. Good morning, Cheryl. Good to have you here with me today. Also use that comments, use my cell phone to let me know any questions that you might have about what we talk about today. And when I see those, when I get those, I will well, first of all, I'll try to remember to actually say the questions so that everybody knows what I'm talking about, and then give an answer. I don't always see them while we're live for various reasons, but like I said, I do go back in and I check things out, and I'll get back to you with an answer, or I might remember to, especially if I think it's something that others might have the same question, I'll address it in an upcoming video. Good morning, Marcia. Remember, use sunscreen these days. Yeah, I was thinking about that this morning, but I ended up walking out of the house without it. Although, fortunately / unfortunately, I'm going to be stuck in the office pretty much the whole day today. So I don't think I'm going to have to worry about getting sunburnt in the office today. But definitely should be wearing it if you're outside. That's for sure. Thank you for that public service announcement on that. And also comments and texting for joys and concerns, things that we want to keep each other in prayer about as we share life together. And the cell phone number is 570-351-1619. That'll take care of that. Announcements. Today is our last episode for this week. And this is episode 4 on our journey through 1 Samuel. Episode 4 on our journey through 1 Samuel. And like I said, I think I said this yesterday, when we're done with 1 Samuel, which is going to take a while, especially since I got a vacation coming up in a few weeks. Yeah, I don't know that we're going to finish this before my vacation. I don't remember how many chapters there are in 1 Samuel. So I think we'll probably just go right into 2 Samuel when we finish this. Since, as I said the other day, it originally was just one document, one one giant scroll, and the Greeks decided it was too much, so they split it into two. Good morning, John. Good to have you with us this morning as well. So today is the last episode for this week of PB Reads the Bible. Last episode of PB Reads the Bible for this week. Tomorrow is my Sabbath. Saturday is my Sue Day, the honeydew day, although that usually takes place on Friday too. Sunday worship. Oh, other announcements. I'm sorry. Actually, first of all, tonight is our prayer stations in Labyrinth. So if you're in the area, join us for that. That's at 6:30 this evening. We have the prayer station set up around the sanctuary for guided prayer. We have a sheet of paper at a stand at each of these locations, six or seven locations that we have set up around the sanctuary, with a piece of paper at each, and with a different focus for your prayers to help guide you through that. And we will also have our labyrinth set up in Frank Hall, just outside the sanctuary. That's actually set up right now. Carl Henry was setting it up about 10 minutes ago when I walked through there. So I'm sure he's got it done by now, and that'll be all set to go. If you don't know what a labyrinth is, you can think of a maze with turns and stuff like that. But whereas a maze has multiple pathways and most of them end in dead ends, can't go any farther. They're meant to get you trapped. They're meant to get you lost. A labyrinth is similar. It's got like an intricate pathway, but there's only one path. And so as long as you stay on the path, you will not get lost. Whereas a maze is designed to get you trapped and lost, a labyrinth is designed to help you find yourself, to help you find your center, and to find freedom rather than being trapped. So join us 6:30 this evening if you're anywhere near here. That does not get live streamed. There's not much to show, but so you've got that. So Sunday of course is worship in person at 8:45 and 10:15. I'm sorry, 8:15 and 10:45. Brain cramp on that one. 8:15 and 10:45 in person. The 10:45 is also live streamed. We start a few minutes early and show some announcements for you, but the worship experience itself begins at 10:45. We try to be as accurate to that as possible, so that but we give you a few minutes to log in. That's why we started a few minutes early, and you can find out what's going on in the church. Also on Sunday is in the evening, 6:30, is a praise and worship service. I'd love to have you join us for that if you're in the area. That is also live, in person only. That's not live streamed. We can't live stream it for copyright purposes. We have permission to use songs for that in person, but we do not have permission to use those songs in a live stream. So we need to be careful about that. And since that's all singing, it's kind of better if you're in person anyway for that one. So that's it for announcements. Oh, well, we'll come back again next week. So episode 5 will be on Monday. Monday and Tuesday will be live. Wednesday and Thursday will both be recorded. It'll go live at 9 o'clock for you folks, but I'm going to have to do videos for the two of those due to some things going on. Wednesday, there's a informational session about General Conference that I wanted to go to, find out what's going on. And then Thursday, doctor's appointment. So can't be in two places at one time and all that kind of stuff. So Wednesday and Thursday will both be live for you, but pre-recorded for me. Okay, good morning, Ron. You're live today. Answer the question. I don't think I am proud. However, I do find myself having to be reminded that any talents, abilities, and accomplishments are not mine, but gifts from God and His grace. Wonderful. That is our question for the week, at least. Am I proud? And Saint Augustine said that pride is the love of one's own excellence. The love of one's own excellence. is not the same as having a healthy idea of self-esteem. So thank you for that, Ron. Thank you for that. These are questions we should ask ourselves all the time. Good morning, Colleen. You're able to be here as well. This is awesome. This is great stuff. Great stuff, folks. I think actually everybody checked in if my math is right over here. Okay. So where are we? Well, this is episode 4, and we are on chapter 4 of 1 Samuel. So chapters 4, 5, and 6 are described as an arc narrative, ARK, not ARC, ARK narrative. It is, they call it that because it's a story all about the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark of the Covenant is kind of the main character in these 3 chapters. Okay, so it seems very abrupt. There's an abrupt change in scenery, an abrupt change in place, and an abrupt change in characters. 4, 5, and 6, I don't think we see Samuel at all. We definitely don't see Samuel at all in chapter 4, for sure. We briefly see Eli, Phineas, and Hophni. But whereas Samuel pretty much was the main character from chapters 1, 2, and 3, especially at the end of chapter 3, he's been established as God's prophet, as Yahweh's prophet. And he is the main character for sure. We get to chapter 4 and he's not in it at all. He's not in it at all. The Ark makes an appearance onto the stage, comes onto the stage. Another character, big character, makes it onto the stage, and that's going to be in the first 4 or 5 words, the Philistines. All of a sudden, we've got the Philistines on stage, and we see some things taking place here. The story does not give us a whole lot of background as far as exactly what's going on. It's not much of a spoiler to say we're going to be talking about a battle, a couple battles, military events taking place. The story doesn't give us background as to why, a whole lot of background why. We can kind of guess things based on actual history. The Philistines had come onto the coastal plains right along the sea, the Mediterranean Sea. They'd come right along the sea, and they had become the chief tribe among the Canaanites. They were the most powerful, so they kind of took control of Canaan. So we can assume that they were probably trying to expand their territory and move into some of the tribal territory of some of the territory of the tribes of Israel. It seems like a logical explanation. Also, based on one line in here, we can see that perhaps they were making some of the Israelites their slaves. Okay, so we can based on one line only, though, so we can't say for sure. It doesn't specifically say that, but it hints at it. It hints at those things. So scholars are in disagreement about this piece, the chapters 4, 5, and 6. Most would agree that it's like a separate story that was brought into the rest of the document, as most of the document was, probably composed of multiple stories that an editor, especially one who was deuteronomistic, meaning interested in Jewish legal and religious aspects. That would be a deuteronomist, very, very interested in Jewish religious law and code, and high view of temple, high view of the sacrifices and high view of all that kind of religiosity stuff, and that they that as a person from that background was at least one of the editors of Samuel. And so this section here has different aspects to it, some of which, if we keep that D, Deuteronomistic, and I'll just say they just call it D writing in mind, but we can also pick out some other types of editors in here as well. Anyway, let's get to the story, shall we? Chapter 4, starting with verse 1b, the second half of verse 1. Remember, I said whoever broke up into chapters made a mistake. They didn't ask me for my opinion, and they ended chapter 3 like a half a verse too early. That the first half of verse 1 goes with chapter 3, and now we've got this change in story. So we're going to pick up from there. Chapter 4 isn't extremely long. So again, I'm going to read the whole thing, so we get the whole idea. Just, you can sit and listen. You can follow along in your book, if you're in your Bibles, if you want, or you can just listen to the tale, and then we'll go back and break it up. At which time I would suggest you follow along in your Bible for that part. Okay. In those days, the Philistines mustered for war against Israel, and Israel went out to battle against them. They encamped at Ebenezer, and the Philistines encamped at Aphek. The Philistines drew up in line against Israel, and when the battle was joined, Israel was defeated by the Philistines, who killed about 4,000 men on the field of battle. When the troops came to the camp, the elders of Israel said, "Why has Yahweh put us to rout today before the Philistines? Let us bring the ark of the covenant of Yahweh here from Shiloh, so that he may come among us and save us from the power of our enemies." So the people sent to Shiloh and brought forth from there the ark of the covenant of Yahweh of hosts, who is enthroned on the cherubim. The two sons of Eli, Hophni and Phineas, were there with the ark of the covenant of God. When the ark of the covenant of Yahweh came into the camp, all Israel gave a mighty shout, so that the earth resounded. When the Philistines heard the noise of the shouting, they said, "What does this great shouting in the camp of the Hebrews mean?" When they learned that the ark of Yahweh had come to the camp, the Philistines were afraid, for they said, "Gods have come into the camp." They also said, "Woe to us, for nothing like this has happened before. Woe to us! Who can deliver us from the power of these mighty gods? These are the gods who struck the Egyptians with every sort of plague in the wilderness. Take courage and be men, O Philistines, in order not to become slaves to the Hebrews, as they have been to you. Be men and fight." So the Philistines fought. Israel was defeated, and they fled, everyone to his home. There was a very great slaughter, for there fell of Israel 30,000 foot soldiers. The ark of God was captured, and the two sons of Eli, Hophni and Phineas, died. A man of Benjamin ran from the battle line and came to Shiloh the same day, with his clothes torn and with earth upon his head. When he arrived, Eli was sitting upon his seat by the road watching, for his heart trembled for the ark of God. When the man came into the city and told the news, all the city cried out. When Eli heard the sound of the outcry, he said, "What is this uproar?" Then the man came quickly and told Eli. Now Eli was 98 years old, and his eyes were set so that he could not see. The man said to Eli, "I have just come from the battle. I fled from the battle today." He replied, "How did it go, my son?" The messenger replied, "Israel has fled before the Philistines, and there has also been a great slaughter among the troops. Your two sons also, Hophni and Phineas, are dead, and the ark of God has been captured." When he mentioned the ark of God, Eli fell over backward from his seat by the side of the gate, and his neck was broken, and he died. For he was an old man and heavy. He had judged Israel 40 years. Now his daughter-in-law, the wife of Phineas, was pregnant, about to give birth. When she heard the news that the ark of God was captured and that her father-in-law and her husband were dead, she bowed and gave birth, for her labor pains overwhelmed her. As she was about to die, the women attending her said to her, "Do not be afraid, for you have borne a son." But she did not answer or give heed. She named the child Ichabod, meaning, "The glory has departed from Israel," because the ark of God had been captured, and because of her father-in-law and her husband. She said, "The glory has departed from Israel, for the ark of God has been captured." End of chapter 4. All right. So we're going to go back to the beginning of this and and talk about things as we go along. So we have the Philistines who become a major enemy throughout Samuel, throughout Samuel until David finally defeats them in full somewhere in 2 Samuel. I don't remember what chapter offhand. We'll get to that at some point, probably a couple months from now. We'll find out then when he finally defeats the Philistines. But here they're making their entrance onto the stage as the big baddies from the outside. So what the author seems to be doing, or the editor, I should say, seems to be doing between chapters 1, 2, 3, and now in 4. Chapters 1, 2, 3, and I think I said this the other day, when we read Judges and it ended, there was no king in Israel, and so the people did whatever was good in their own eyes. We had seen at the end of Judges that both from the inside and the outside, politically, militarily, culturally, socially, religiously, Israel had gone down the tubes, more or less. And so the first 3 chapters seem to be talking about the moral decay, and that God is going to address that. And God is going to address that first through this prophet, the prophet Samuel, and the removal of Eli, Hophni, and Phineas, who were part of that social and cultural and religious downfall, the problem from the inside. So now chapter 4, we're seeing the enemy from the outside. We're seeing the enemy from the outside. So that's what seems to be taking place here in 4, 5, and 6, all 3 of these together in particular. And what is God going to do about it? And so that, just keep that in mind. All right. So they're making this entrance onto the stage as the big baddies from the outside, which apparently they were. The Israelites encamped at Ebenezer. And when we think Israelites, don't think the entire country. Don't think the entire country. Probably wasn't, because we're still in a time of a loose confederation of tribes. Basically, they're very tribal and clannish. So when it says the Israelites, Israel went out to battle, not the whole thing. Probably a couple nearby tribes went together to fight off the Philistines, because there is no king in Israel, so there's nobody to really call everybody together, and it's just not part of their social standing, their social relationship at this point. Okay, so just to keep that in mind as we go forward. But they camp at Ebenezer. Not exactly sure where Ebenezer is, and it seems that there are multiple places that were called Ebenezer, because there's another one a few chapters from now, and it's pretty obviously not the same place. So it seems to be a name that was used in a couple different places. What does Ebenezer mean? Ebenezer means stone of remembrance. or stone of strength, stone of remembrance. Here I raise mine Ebenezer is a line from one of our songs. Here I raise mine Ebenezer. Come thou fount of every blessings, if I'm not mistaken, is where that is a line from. And so you raise your Ebenezer, you're raising a stone of remembrance to remember. And it's interesting that they go to this place because it's supposed to be a stone of remembrance for how God has helped, how God has saved you in the past. And so they're gathering at Ebenezer. Meanwhile, the Philistines are gathered together at Aphek. And we can kind of assume that this Ebenezer is relatively near Aphek. But we don't know that for sure, of course. But they're there. What happens? The battle starts. What happens? Israel's defeated. Now, don't read Numbers literally, especially not from our point of view. And it says that about 4,000 men from the Israelites died. Bible scholars agree that the Hebrew word that's thousands is an indefinite number. It's not 10 100s. It's not literally 1,000. It's a military number for a group of soldiers, and it can be almost any number. Most scholars, again, agree that we're probably talking about 50 in this opening battle, the opening salvo, that about 50 Israelites died. That is probably more in keeping with understanding the whole situation, that it's not the entirety of Israel, but it's just, a couple tribes at most in this battle. So it's about 50 that die, So now the people are asking, oh, why has God allowed this to happen? They're seeing that they're thinking that God is directing this and allowing it to happen, and they don't know why. They're not in on it. We're on the outside, being the readers, we're kind of on the inside. We've heard about God's judgment on Eli, Hophni, and Phineas, and that God is going to be doing a new thing, and God is going to use this battle, this situation, and this enemy as part of that, of judgment and this new thing. Okay. But so they're wondering why. Oh, we know why, because we don't have the Ark of the Covenant here. So the D writer or the D editor is probably putting that in there, especially some of this language that's going to be coming up. Because we didn't read Joshua together, but if you read in Joshua in particular, the Ark of the Covenant is brought out to the battles, and great things, amazing things happen, and God wins the battles for them. So they think, we bring the Ark of the Covenant, we bring God, because the Ark of the Covenant was seen as God's seat, God's throne. The Ark of the Covenant is, it's this gold-plated box, and it's got a lid on it. It's called God's seat, God's throne. It's the Ark of the Covenant, or the Ark of the Majesty. And so it's got seraphim on top, and that forms God's seat, God's invisible throne. So they think by bringing the Ark of the Covenant, they're bringing God out onto the battlefield, and God will do great things. Now, notice what I said because of the language. We think this is the D editor putting in here, because they brought from Shiloh the Ark of the Covenant of Yahweh of hosts. And when they use the word hosts here, we're talking armies. So it's a military thing, and it's like the full name for God, Yahweh of hosts, who is enthroned on the cherubim. That's a full title, and very religious language, very, very D language. Okay. So the Yahweh of armies, he is the God of armies. The two sons of Eli, Hophni and Phineas are there. So they're coming in. The reader, we being the reader, yep, we know. Still, they're not saying anything. The author, probably because this section is written by somebody other than the person who wrote the first couple of things or had those first stories. So doesn't say anything about to be judged or anything like that. Just they're there, which they should be because they were in charge of the ark, right? The ark shows up, everybody screams, everybody yells, chants, woohoo, glory, this is awesome stuff. Echoes back to Joshua and the victory at Jericho. And the idea of a battle yell is a long tradition. Cultures around the world have stories of battle yells, even today, but especially when, in other situations. In the United States, we have the legends, the stories of the rebel yell. Well, that's where that term comes from. It was a battle yell, a battle cry. You raise the battle cry, you strike fear into the enemy's heart. And that's why they did that. And it worked. The ground shook because they were so loud. And the Philistines are shaken. They're shaken. But it only works so far. Someone speaks, changes their conversation, and says, be men and fight. And so they fight. And they are again victorious. And we're told that there was a great slaughter and 30,000 of foot soldiers died. Again, not literally 30,000, but at this point we're probably talking several hundred of them died. The ark was captured, and Hophni and Phineas died. Structure-wise, in this passage, I don't talk about this too often, but this is somewhat interesting. That story starts with the battle, starts with the loss of life. They call for the ark, and they bring the ark out. The people, they lose 4,000 of soldiers. The elders speak. The elders have the conversation, and they call for the ark. The ark is brought out. They have their battle cry. Then we see it kind of moves backwards from there. Then we have the Philistines elders speaking to each other, and then there's the resulting battle, the following battle resulting in more death. I probably did that wrong. It's interesting. It's better when you can see it in paper, I suppose, too. Now, so the Ark of the Covenant would have also that memory from the Exodus, because that's when it came. They built it after the Exodus, but it would still have that memory, and it's the presence of God. And yet it's the Philistines who call to mind the Exodus. They're the ones that are like proclaiming Exodus faith, even though it's distorted faith, because they keep using the idea of plural gods rather than singular God. The gods have taken the field. These gods are the ones that did all those things over there. So they're proclaiming Exodus faith, although, like I said, it's a little bit twisted, bent, because they don't remember. They don't have all the information. All right. Ark is captured. Eli's 2 sons die. So that ends first scene of chapter 4. Now we shift location. We have a man from Benjamin who is able to escape, and he makes it to Shiloh. He wanted to get to Shiloh. And immediately we see Eli taking another big, he goes to center stage. He's sitting on a chair right there by the side of the road, watching as much as he can, because as we're going to be reminded in a few verses, he's blind. He can't see. So why is he out there watching? And why is his heart trembling? Is he worried about his sons? His heart trembled for the ark of God. He was waiting for news about the ark of God, not worried about his sons, which is interesting, kind of shocking to us too, perhaps. We'd think that his sons would be of more interest. Nope, it's the ark of God. The guy shows up. Everybody is crying out because of the news, but Eli hasn't heard the news. He can't see anything. He doesn't know what's going on. He can't see that the guy is wearing torn clothes and dirt on his feet, symbolic of sorrow and loss. So he can't see that. So he has to be told what's going on. So the man comes to him and tells him, okay, this is what happened. A lot of people died in the battles. Okay, lots of people died in the battles. Your 2 sons are dead. Oh, and the ark of God has been captured. When he mentioned the ark of God, Eli fell over. When he mentioned the ark of God, Eli fell over, broke his neck, died. It's not the news about his son that shocks him to the point where he falls over. It is distress and shock over the news that the Ark of the Covenant has been taken, has been captured. Because the Ark was that important to him, because the Ark symbolizes God. And so the Ark being captured and taken away is like God being taken away. We also need to remember, and I should have pointed this out earlier, that this stuff, since this was most likely written during the exile or right around there, the people in exile in Babylon would have had great attachment to this story. They would have seen themselves in this story. They would have seen themselves in this story. And by the end, they would have been given hope because of this story. All right. He was an old man. He had judged Israel 40 years. And that's interesting because the first 3 chapters never mention Eli as a judge. He's just mentioned as a priest. He's never mentioned as a judge. That seems to be more indication of the D writer, or at the very least, a pro-monarchy writer, pointing out, reminding people this is before there was a king. So anybody who was before a king was part of the judges for them. And 40 years, again, just that round number, that generalized long time. Then we get to the story about the wife of Phineas, not given a name, of course, but she's pregnant. She's pregnant, about to give birth. When she hears the news and the order, the Ark of Covenant was captured, the Ark of God was captured, her father-in-law and her husband were dead. She bowed and she gave birth, and her labor was intense. And we're never told, but we can sort of presume that she died, because it says that it overwhelmed her, and it says, give the child the name before you die, or something like that, right? We have born a son. She did not answer a gift heed. She named the child. It doesn't say that. Why did I think it say that? But anyway, because of this idea of her being overwhelmed and the attendants saying, name the child, we can sort of presume that she died in childbirth, or just after the childbirth. Child born is a son. She gives the child the name Ichabod, which is translated as the glory has departed from Israel. The Hebrew, the literal Hebrew, it's an accurate translation. NIV and NRSV, they're fine. But literally, what it says in Hebrew is the glory has gone into exile from Israel. The glory has gone into exile from Israel. And what is the glory she's talking about? The glory she's talking about is the Ark of God has been captured. The Ark of God has been captured. The glory has gone into exile from Israel. Again, the people reading this or hearing this in exile would have that connection to this story for multiple reasons, one of which they also had the Ark of the Covenant taken into exile along with them. So there's a very strong connection there. And I think it was intentional by the author to use that specific language, that specific verb, gone into exile. The glory has gone into exile from Israel. And so chapter 4 ends with a pretty much downer, right? The people at the time and the people reading this in Babylon, if the story stopped there, it's kind of a downer. They can see the connection. But it's almost like God is no longer there in Israel, and seems to be that God has no power over the Philistines, that they are that strong that they've been able to take away Israel's God. Were they able to do that? Are they that strong? You'll have to tune in on Monday to find out more about the story, what happens next. Because that's all for today, my friends. I do pray that this has been beneficial to you, that you have learned something or relearned something in something we've said or read today, that God has spoken to you in some way. As you go about your days, not just today, but every day, keep those eyes and ears open to both physical and spiritual, to everything that our living, loving, active God is doing in your life and in the lives of those around you. When you see it, when you hear it, say, thank you, God, and then tell somebody about it, right? Until we meet again, my friends, be blessed.